Now on Videowave, the Vipers, specifically Pat and Paul of the Vipers.
Hello.
Now you have an album coming out on Passport Records pretty soon.
That's right, the end of November.
It's called Out of the Nest.
Yeah.
Which is basically our rehearsal space up on 8th Avenue and 38th Street that we've...
So we're coming out of the garage right into your living room onto your turntable.
Now you said something interesting before. You didn't refer to yourself as being a neo-psychedelic band, you just referred to yourself as being 60s influenced.
Which is basically it. We aren't basically a psychedelic band per se. It's basically just rave up, rhythm and blues pop songs from the 60s that we've used as our chief influence in our sound, without taking it into something that's very, drug influenced or anything like that. It's just, sort of beer drinking, fast-paced rock and roll.
And it's all the wonderful stuff that we grew up with, and so that's really what we know, aside from, I mean, there are a lot of other bands that are going around that we consider to be much more psychedelic, so it's kind of, we're treading on ground there that's really not our own. And so we'd like, the way we described ourselves is more the way we look at ourselves. That's,
now
our form.
To a degree, you've been sort of lumped in with the neo-psychedelic thing, right?
Yeah.
And that can be useful and it can be harmful, right?
Of course, it can be very useful. Like, there is a growing popularity, around the country for like psychedelic bands and this and that, and it is useful in that sense in getting bookings and this and that. But it can also be damaging because it seems
limiting.
It seems limiting, but it doesn't seem to be going over too well as far as the critics and everything. They seem to be slagging it without really taking it seriously. And
in terms of the songs that we write, also, we would have to put a little more acid into it to really make it something that's true to form for what we're doing. And we just feel that rather than using those as the limitations, just making the songs themselves as strong as possible, and then putting them across, and hopefully, like, being considered a psychedelic band or a 60s rock and roll band will help us get out there. But once that happens,
get people's attention.
Yeah, to get people's attention, and then we want people to really look at the music rather than to sort of lump us in with that and just try to base their opinions on what they know about the 60s rather than what they see from the Vipers, which is much more important from where we are.
Now, one of the Vipers used to have some affiliation with the Fleshtones, is that correct?
John Weiss, our lead singer, who unfortunately is not here tonight.
He played sax for him for a while and did a few albums with him, and he did their last album with him, and also his Roman Gods as well. He's a great sax player, but he's also our lead singer.
Now, the Fleshtones are another band who somehow, to a degree are sort of put into that category, but pretty much they've become independent of it. Just they're making rock and roll that is 60s influence, is 50s influence too.
Exactly.
Do you see yourself sort of in the same field as them?
Yeah, sort of similarly. They're a fun rock and roll band, and I'd like to be considered a fun rock and roll band. But these days, with so much fragmentation in terms of the way people look at rock and roll, it's really hard to just say, okay, yeah, I play rock and roll, because they say, well, what do you do? Do you have synthesizers, or do you do this, or do you do that? And so it's really a lot harder to define it in terms of, I mean, you have to define it these days much more. So, I think that's, it's a limitation.
Now, we're going to see a live video of you, so that
Yeah.
should be a pretty good idea, give people a pretty good idea of what's going on with the Vipers.
We're about, yeah.
Yeah, now this was filmed at 240 West.
Yeah.
And it's a live video from early in the summer or midsummer about?
Right, there was a Fuzz Fest, it was titled, and it had all the bands basically from New York City, the Fuzz Tones, the Trifles, the Cheapskates, and a band from Long Island called the Mosquitoes, as well as Out of Place from New York City. And this is one of our tunes from it.
So a live video, it's from the Vipers on Videowave. A live video from the Vipers. We're here right now on Videowave. We have Dave and Paul from
Where's
the Vipers.
Pat?
I don't know.
Where did you come from, David?
Oh, I was over there.
Well, anyway.
Something that you mentioned before about you can't be classified as this music or that music. Now, the Vipers are most definitely dance music.
That's our main top priority, really.
Is it difficult convincing people that dance music doesn't have to sound a a certain way that people have decided dance music has to sound?
I don't think so. I think at first, you know, people that are used to a certain sound, they might be a little bit surprised, but then once they sit and watch it, they end up standing up and dancing. That's what usually happens.
It must be the kind of music that anyone can like. I mean, there must be a lot of people who came to see the Vipers not expecting to like them, and were surprised.
And a lot of people came to see us not knowing that we were even going to be there or what we were or anything, that wound up coming back. People that come up to us and say, wow, this is our first time, we really dig your stuff, which is nice, you know, it gives me a kick.
Now, you've been around the country with the Vipers?
No, we've been around the Northeast, though, and we have quite a large contingency in Pittsburgh right now, a lot of teenage kids.
Big fan club in Pittsburgh.
That's really surprising. It's
You've
kinda
played
nice.
in Pittsburgh?
Yeah. We've been there twice.
We've done a riverboat and a Beetle Fest at a Sheridan Center in the lounge while they were having trading going on, which was kind of interesting.
Now, how did the Vipers become associated with the Beetle Fest?
There was a promoter, a guy named Pat, who was up there, and he liked us a lot, and he was putting the thing together. And he had a Beatles look-alike, sound-alike band from Ohio that was up there playing the main ballroom. They wanted something for people who just sort of filtered away from it into the main hotel. So
But compatible somehow.
Yeah, compatible somehow.
Well, we represented the American wave, you know, that was going on at the time.
Yeah.
And that's how it was presented, you know. I don't think a lot of people there really sort of got that, but it was pretty good. The people that did know about us were very responsive. They're very friendly.
Now, in New York, you've played a lot of pretty high visibility gigs, either opening for other people and on your own. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, we've done all the bigger clubs here. The place most kind to us has been the Peppermint Lounge as far as large venues. And we had a residency at the Dive pretty much for about 20 weeks or so. We had a scene called the Thursday Night Cave Stomp, and that brought a lot of people out of the woodwork on weeknights.
Yeah.
And you would bring down guest bands to play that as well, right?
Right.
Like the Fleshtones played, and didn't they?
And a lot of lesser-known bands.
Well,
We gave them
the
opportunities.
Yeah. Now, did your singer, John, didn't he at one time work at the Peppermint Lounge?
Yes, he did. He was the doorman there for a while before they're closing on 45th Street at the historic location, as well as the new downtown location.
Now, we mentioned before that John, his parents had a radio show.
Yes.
That I was familiar with, that both his parents were psychiatrists or psychologists.
Yeah.
And does this wear off on the relationships with the band, that one of your members grew up in a house full of psychiatrists?
No, we don't
What
look
was
at
that? Oh, no, it's okay.
We don't look at him as a psychotic, no.
Now, by the time this is aired, your album will be out?
It should be, yeah, last week of November, for anybody who cares.
Yeah.
Now, are you the first people from this scene, not counting the Fleshtones, of course, the first people from the scene to be out on a semi-major or big independent label?
Well, whether we are or not, we sort of consider it a milestone for all the other bands that are coming after us, and hoping that it will actually provide, the groundwork for the groups to follow that we consider to be really cool and hip. The Mosquitoes being my prime faves right now, and yeah, we think it'll open up doors.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think the whole industry is headed in this direction. I think.
Okay, and the
Very nice.
Vipers will be on tour to support the album all
Yes,
over the country,
most
presumably.
definitely,
Yeah.
and throughout Europe.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Well, thanks a lot for coming down to Videowave.
Thank
And
you.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks.
My name is Tim Sommer. Thanks for tuning in. Goodbye.